Today is July the 14th. Don't all religions lead to God? Let's find out together as we study Jesus' words. Today, if you're talking to someone on the street and they say that they're religious, if you ask them what they mean, eventually you'll come to a statement, well, all religions lead to God, so I just need to be religious and I'll be okay in the end. Is that so? Is that what Jesus says? Well, in the book of Matthew, at the very end of chapter 9, verse 35, Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. He healed every kind of disease and illness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but workers are few. Pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the fields." Jesus looks at his disciples. There are more people than he can manage. And so he says to his disciples, pray for workers. Another command dealing with sharing the gospel. In Matthew chapter 10, the very next verses, then Jesus called his 12 disciples together and he gave them authority to cast out evil spirits, to heal every kind of disease and illness. Then over several verses, Matthew names the 12. And in verse 5, Jesus sent out the 12 apostles with these instructions. Don't go to the Gentiles or the Samaritans. Go to the people of Israel, God's lost sheep. Go and announce to them that the kingdom of heaven is near. He commands them to go. He commands them to go to Israel. That's interesting. In the command to go to Israel, there are several other commands that he gives. We're just going to look at them very, very quickly and not mention them in the other commands because these were specific to that one task when he sent the 12 out to the lost sheep of Israel. Matthew 10:9, he says, don't take any money in your money belts. 10:10, don't carry a traveler's bag. Don't carry a change of clothing or sandals or even a walking stick. In Luke 10:4, which narrates this same passage, he says, don't even stop to greet people on the way. Back in Matthew 10, when you enter a city or village, search for a worthy person. Stay in his home until you leave town. Matthew 10:12-13, when you enter a home, give it your blessing. And then in 14, if any town refuses to welcome you, shake its dust from your feet. Now, these commands were meant to direct the disciples in that particular event, which was an evangelistic campaign. But Jesus also says, go in other places. For example, in Mark 16:15, he says, go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee. They'll see me there. In Luke 10:3, he says, "Go, I'm sending you out as lambs among the wolves." And then to all of his disciples, in John chapter 20, verse 21, he says, "As the Father has sent me, so am I sending you." One of the most well-known passages, Matthew chapter 28, Jesus says, "Go and make disciples." The verb go is actually not in the imperative. It's a gerund. It could be translated "as you are going," but one frequent grammatical figure when you attach a gerund to another imperative verb. Both of them are imperatives. So it's possible to translate that, "Go and make disciples." Jesus commands us to go. In the same way, he commands us here in Matthew 28:18 to make disciples. That's the content of what we are to do. And then in Luke chapter 14, he gives another parable of a king that made a banquet. He invited people and they refused to come. And so in Luke 14:21, the king says to his servants, "Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town, invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." They do, they come, and there's still room. So they say there's still room. So in the next verse, the master says, "Go into the country lanes, go behind the hedges, urge anyone you find to come, so that the house will be full." Do all religions lead to God? If they did, why is Jesus so adamant about going and telling? All roads do not lead to God. In fact, the easier roads, the wider lanes, lead to destruction. It's the narrow gate, the narrow door, that leads to salvation. Our task is to go and tell others so that they enjoy what God has given us. Do all religions lead to God? No. No, not at all. So my question for you today, who are you urging to come in? Who are you praying for, engaging with, and waiting for an opportunity to share the relationship that you have with Jesus with them? Like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to this devotion. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll answer the question, is it hard to share your faith?